let's talk about gluttony. You probably imagine that gluttony is just something that deals with an excessive attitude towards food, like bulimia. But actually, the problem is much more pervasive. And above all, thanks to this little gadget, you know it? A smartphone. What can you do with a smartphone? You can order a pizza online, of course. You can watch videos, you can watch social medias, you have access to news, you can listen to music, you can gamble online, and you can even call your drug dealer. So that machine gives you access to all sorts of pleasure, and anytime it will give you a kick of dopamine. And that kick of dopamine that we call addiction used to be called gluttony in the past. So this problem may concern you. My name is Maxim. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my domain is to bridge spirituality with psychology. Just an element of context. Imagine that you are a monk living in one of those very harsh environment in the desert. You spend your entire day on praying or maybe walking, and what can you possibly anticipate as a pleasurable activity? Food, of course. So the monks started to have all sorts of fantasy about food, because their life was not exactly a source of pleasure. And somehow, gluttony and even the thought of eating try to filling the void that the absence of pleasure has created. What modern day psychology can teach us about gluttony is the understanding of what is an addiction. An addiction is just an interest for pleasure. We are all interested to pleasure. But the addicted person, instead of waiting to the moment he or she will get the source of pleasure, will be mentally projected and very tense and trying to shorten the time between the present moment and the moment they will get the thing they are addicted to. So it could be food, it could be drug, alcohol, it could be porn, it could be virtually any source of pleasure could potentially be turned into an addiction if we start to reorganize our life towards that very source of pleasure. So it is really something that kind of hook us, like the fish is hooked by the fisher, and when it gets us, it may consume our entire life. And some addiction have few consequences, some will completely destroy your life. Actually, the addiction to pleasure, the addiction we just mentioned about food, sex, or drug is just the visible part of the iceberg. Because there is a lot of much more deeply rooted type of addiction. We can get addicted to people. And if those people become our only source of reward or only source of initiative, and we fall into a relational dependency, that's addiction. A lot of people are addicted to their work, and they have a lot of projects and they feel they're striving for it, but it consumes their entire private life, because of course it's much easier to control your work environment than to control your family. So the professional life gets much more tasty than the private life, and you just give up with the private. At the higher level, there is a very vicious type of gluttony that is happening mostly to very high-ranking person. It is the pleasure to disrupt the system and invent some new fancy type of way to short-circuit the entire system and force the world to run behind them. And this is, of course, a very sophisticated type of addiction, but some people are really druggy on innovations and disruptions. Let's enter into the deep aspect of the sin of gluttony. Fundamentally, a gluttony is having a problem with time. So time is a very strange mental phenomenon where we tend to project all sorts of future events, probably according to what we have experienced in the past, but we plan things. And when you are having an issue with gluttony, the thing is you cannot help projecting pleasurable activity, and those pleasurable activity makes you feel that you have some control of your life, but obviously at the end they will end up controlling your life. And the core problem of gluttony is that you need a faster pleasure, a quick shot of dopamine. And if several of the type of addiction I was describing concern you, if you are potentially addicted to work, to relationship, to all sorts of substance and source of pleasure, well, I have a good news for you. You may have a soul of the third ray, which is active intelligence. And the addiction actually is a distortion of that capacity to plan action and to make it pleasurable. And of course, there is no simple solution for addiction. And because if it's your case to have a third-ray soul, it is deeply ingrained, the sense of time. And whenever you panic, you will tend to try to master your environment through one or another type of addictive behavior. So as a truth seeker and a psychologist, here is my recommendation. I told you that addiction, gluttony, is mostly a problem of time. You tend to project a future reward and to regulate your present emotion, projecting yourself into a future reward. But there is something utterly wrong with that. Is that the future do not really exist except in our imagination. And if you really want to make yourself free from an addiction, what you absolutely need to know is to learn to enjoy the moment in the here and now. And I know it sounds cheesy to talk about the here and now, but especially if you have an issue with addiction, you are incapable to enjoy the current situation and to set your mind into the here and now. So any practice related to the here and now, mindfulness meditation, some Zen practice are based on that, it will ground you and you will start to enjoy any possible situation. And if you do so, well, you won't need your source of addiction anymore, because the present do not require to have some future pleasurable goals at hand. You can enjoy in the here and now, even if There is nothing special to enjoy. You may decide that things happen now. So we will meet in the next video to talk about other things.